Hello everyone and welcome back to the start of 2024 whiskey reviews. Kicking off in a big way, we started last year with a Macallan and we'll be doing another Macallan now, but I can guarantee you this one's going to be infinitely better than the Arabica was. Arabica, don't care. This is a Cadenhead's bottling of an 18-year-old cask strength sherry Macallan, bottled by William Cadenhead. And how have I come across this? I hear you all scream, or maybe mutter. Well, I'm quite good friends with a gentleman called Mark Littler, and I believe Vin at No Nonsense Whisky has already done a very similar video to this, but I'll be doing a few, because I think we need to take a bit more time to talk about these whiskies. Mark approached me, and we've done work for Mark and with Mark in the past, and it's always quite fun, there's always something interesting. And he said, here's an auction site. Pick miniatures that you think will be interesting. He purchases them. His team do an entire background of research on them for their own website. I and Vin were lucky enough to get to try some of these incredible things. Totally separate ones, we picked different whiskies. And yeah, that's kind of the crux of it really. And when I picked this out, obviously, a Cadenhead 18-year-old Macallan is something that is particularly fun, bottled at 54.9%. I was just like, that would be nice, surely. And then in the glass, it does look particularly nice too. It's just like cola syrup or something. But I have all of this information here from Mark about this particular whiskey, if my phone will work. So, Macallan-Glenlivet 18-year-old Cadenhead's miniature, 5CL, 54.9% ABV. There are no full bottles for sale anywhere in the world that we're aware of from standard retailers. Auction price, it's rarely been seen on an auction in a full-size bottle. That information is not available, it's not sold for a long time, can't find any of this particular bottling at 54.9% in 70cl that have ever been sold. The whiskey base code for this, if any of you want to know it, is WB8007. And Whiskey Fun, Serge and Angus at Whiskey Fun, rated this a 95. I have tried this before, and the miniature had leaked a little bit, so I need to save some for Mark, because this is his money. So I'm going to put the bottle to one side. Brief talk about Macallan. Collector's market, blah, blah, blah. Secondary market. 2 months ago, they sold another bottle of whiskey for the most expensive in the world. They've got the oldest bottle of whiskey for sale in the world. Blah, 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 blah. But we don't need to talk about Macallan in its current state right now, because this isn't a current state Macallan. So I think all current conversation about Macallan is a little bit devoid when we're talking about this. So this doesn't actually have any vintages on it or anything. So we don't actually know when this was bottled. We don't know when it was distilled. We just know it's 18 years old, it's cask strength, and it's from a single barrel of Oloroso sherry. That's literally all we know. Mark's team have dived in quite hard to find information on this, and that's all they can really dig up. There are some Cadenhead vintages, both miniatures and full-size bottles, which have a distillation date or a bottling date, but we don't have anything with this. It just is as simple as you can say on the front of it. Excuse me. Macallan of an era gone by. We do have to remember that Macallan really didn't start bottling their own whiskey until the early 1980s. There may have been a couple of rare examples outside of that, but I think 1983 really is when Macallan started to bottle their own single malts. Those whiskies are still lauded up until this day. They weren't cask strength, but they were still 18-year-olds at 43%, 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds. Really, really tasty stuff. I like Macallan whiskey a lot. I'm just not particularly willing to pay the money for it these days. I just don't think it's worth it compared to Glenallachie, Glenturret in particular. But prior to them bottling their own whiskey, Gordon MacPhail in particular, Cadenhead, probably not Signatory. I don't think Signatory go back that far. All of these other independent bottlers were bottling their whiskey for them. Gordon MacPhail probably being the main people doing that. So to come across these things is a very interesting rarity. I can't remember what Mark paid for this. It was the most expensive one. I think it was like close to about £200 or something. So this is an expensive miniature. It's the most expensive miniature I've ever tried. But discuss amongst yourselves and at home the thoughts of Macallan of an era gone by, because some of you watching this will be able to do that. My generation can't really do that. We have the opportunity to trial Macallans. We don't necessarily have the monetary output to buy them, but it is always a privilege to try. So let's smell and nose this. There is a link in the bio box below. So there's about 5 or 6 whiskies in this miniature series. We're just dedicating one to this because of how sort of unique it is. There'll be a link below to an article which should have been published on January the 6th about all of my tasting notes for all of the samples. If you want to know in advance what's going to be reviewed, click on that link. If you want to leave it as a surprise, I would just ignore it, but it is below if you just want to do that. Let's smell, let's taste, and let's reminisce about good old sherry from Macallan, bottled by Cadenhead. The biggest aroma of... I mean, it smells how it looks. It does have this beautiful smell of like Coca-Cola and lemongrass and sugar syrup. Beautiful amalgamation of dates and nuts, and I mean, we are just coming out of Christmas. It's still winter, so the taste of like hazelnuts and walnuts is still pretty strong in my palate. Like chocolate covered Brazil nuts, that was a bit of a revelation for me this year. This real strong sugary smell of like hot chocolate. And with a lot of older Macallans, I've always got this kind of cocoa powder, like hot chocolate powder thing. And that's running right down the middle of it. There are your classic sherry notes too. Again, the filling of a mince pie, raisin. Fruit that is so marinated in sherry that it's almost moving into the territory of being savoury. There is a real knife's edge to this product of being sweet and savoury, and it dips like this. I promise you at some point this cough will go. And then a range of like baked things too. You get in like, there's almost like a buttery croissant nature to it. And then that is filled again with like, I think pain au raisin, pain au chocolat. It certainly leans more sweet, but there are points where you think it could really, really go into savoury with those nuttier notes. But let's taste it and see what's going on. Oh. Okay, so if it leans sweet on the nose, it certainly doesn't on the palate. The spice from this thing is incredible. It's not often you get to try Macallan at just under 55% ABV in general, aged that long. But yeah, that Brazil nut thing. Like you think about a bowl of mixed nuts and there's almonds and peanuts and Brazil nuts and cashew and hazelnut. That dry earthiness of it all. And then it starts to move back in with some sort of resonant sweetness. It's almost like beeswax, really, really rich, thick, fresh honey. There's a herbaceous note to it, but I can't quite put my finger on what that is at the minute. It's leaning into this kind of sagey territory, which I've had in the past with loads of independent bottlings of heavily sherried Craig Ellicky. They've always gone down this almost like sage and onion stuffing sort of route. A really waxy wood polish, sticky veneer finish to it. Like I feel like there's almost like bits of toffee stuck to my teeth or something. You kind of want to dig into every crevice and pull it out. Let's do that again. Even with all that, it isn't the thickest whiskey I've ever come across, which it should be. Should be. 18 years old, 55%, all sherry. It isn't the thickest, oiliest, richest thing ever, but the way it delivers spice, and it isn't barrel spice. You know, if you had to ask me if this is American or European oak, it's definitely European oak. 100% would put some form of money on it that is not an American oak cask. It's just dirtier. And going back to the nutty thing, the finish of this and the kind of dry, very tannic quality to it, like it's pulling moisture out of my tongue. There's a salty note, which is very, very interesting, which reminds me very much of like pistachio. But it isn't leaning into the sweet kind of pistachio latte thing. It's just pistachio nuts, salty, chewy. This is where I'm going to butt heads with people at Whisky Fun. It's a wonderful smell. It's a very interesting taste. I don't think it's the type of sherry cask that I inherently lean towards if I were to go down the sherry route. They scored it a 95. I'm going to score it an 8.5. I think it is perfectly fine. It's nice whiskey, for sure. But it is a type of Macallan that most of us aren't used to. That doesn't make it bad, just doesn't make it particularly for me. But I do think that is something which would stand out to someone who knows a lot about Macallan and has had the privilege to try a lot of incredible old Macallan bottled in the last couple of decades. You know, this would be a standout to someone like you. To me, it leans, even with the strength, a little too spicy, a little too herbaceous. Isn't what I personally look for in a sherry cask. But yes, I give this, the Cadenhead Macallan-Glenlivet 18-year-old, an 8.5 out of 10. Really interesting, really different, so we will do a few more of these videos. They'll probably be in sets of 3, and I've broke all of my glasses, so I need to buy some more Glencans. But yes, we will be doing another one in about 2 or 3 weeks' time. I've got a lot of whiskey to work through because I bought some insane stuff in the last couple of months. But yes, if you want more info on this, there's a full article in the link below, right up by myself and Mark's team too. But yes, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next week. Cheers.